And what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Coast to Coast Gridiron, a football podcast. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, someone that I'm super excited that's joining me on today's podcast. He played his college football with the Ohio State Buckeyes and the North Carolina Tar Heels. He was a UDFA, a undrafted free agent in the 2020 season to the Buffalo Bills. He spent a little bit of time in the NFL with the New York Giants as well, and now he is bringing his talents up north and is first time playing in the Canadian Football League, playing with the BC Lions. Antonio Williams is joining us on today's episode. Antonio, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to be on here. Excited to be here with you and just talk, man. Just really discuss, just this journey that I've been on, man.
Awesome, man. Just talk some ball. So, if anybody knows me, obviously, if you're watching the podcast today, you can see behind me. I love my Buffalo Bills. I'm also from Canada. I'm from the west coast of Canada and British Columbia. So I'm a Canadian football fan as well as a British BC Lions fan. So, Antonio, when I was kind of starting this podcast, what I wanted to do is kind of, I feel like everybody and their mom, if you will, kind of has a podcast or some sort of platform to kind of talk about the NFL. And I feel like that's kind of lacking in the CFL. So I wanted to kind of, I didn't play any high level of football by any means. I played a little bit of junior level football up here, but I wanted to kind of shed a little bit of light on the athletes and then the game itself, because I feel like that's kind of a little bit of missing content and platform for those athletes. So as well, I wanted to be able to have a platform where I could kind of talk about my Bills when the Bills season starts and kind of have my takes and kind of be able to interact with people. So this is a great episode and great opportunity for me to kind of combine the two, talk about some CFL, talk about the NFL, specifically about my Buffalo Bills. So super excited, Antonio, and I really appreciate you for joining me, man. I know you're busy, so let's get into it. Like I said, I know you're a busy man, so I wanted to touch on it quickly, maybe introduce the audience to you off the field. I know you have some hobbies off the field. I guess we will start from maybe, I believe, the beginning more so. Tell us a little bit about your interest in NASCAR and a little bit of how you're involved in the business today, and maybe how much you plan to maybe expand your role, maybe after your playing career, even now, Antonio.
100%. Yeah, no, I grew up in a small town in North Carolina in the US and everything. And where I'm from was a little bit, maybe 45 minutes, 50 minutes from Charlotte. And that's where Charlotte Motor Speedway was, and that's kind of a hub for NASCAR. So a lot of NASCAR, you grow up in that area, you watch NASCAR your whole life. And as a kid, I'd go over to my grandparents' house and I'd watch it with my granddad on Sundays sometimes. Even we'd watch the races sometimes, even more than we watch the football games. So I was that, involved with NASCAR up to that point. But yeah, when I entered the NFL, I had the opportunity, and I let it be known that I was interested in joining NASCAR in some aspect. And I ended up linking up with Joe Graf Jr., who's in the Xfinity Series. He's having a good year this year. He's doing really well. He's got a part-time ride with Joe Gibbs Racing, which is a really good team in the Xfinity Series, and then his other team is with RS. So other than that, man, no. In the future, I just want to continue to stay involved. I really don't know what it holds for me in NASCAR, but growing up a fan of the sport and now being able to have some type of business aspect in it, that's big for me. It's the same thing as football. Obviously, I grew up a fan of it. I can't go drive a car though, so that's a big difference for me. So I jumped in on the business side.
Awesome. So for someone that's I'm not really familiar with it. I don't believe many Canadians is. Canadians are. I'm not really sure how popular it is, to be honest, up here, but that's super interesting to hear about. When I was doing some research about you, I was kind of intrigued to learn about that, and that's I think it's kind of rare to hear about athletes kind of dabbling into that. So I was interested, and I was intrigued to ask you about it. So as well, you have a little bit of interest in some esports and gaming. I believe you have your own esports team. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, esports was really big for me. So yeah, I started Ancient World Gaming about 3 years ago, and it was really just an idea. It was right around the time that FaZe Clan was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and it motivated me. I was like, I feel like I can build a team. Obviously, FaZe was, they're the top dogs. They, have a lot of ground in the game, and it would take a while to get to that point. Obviously, they've been doing it for 11 years, and we started 3 years ago. But yeah, started Ancient World Gaming, and everything started smoothly. We signed some really great creators, some really good players, and we actually have a competitive Call of Duty team now. We're starting a competitive e-racing league that should stretch across the entire nation, actually. And then we actually partner with SEBA 2K, a league. It's a league out of stat, and it's also we also have a Madden cycle that they play Madden, and we have a really good Madden tournament involved with Ancient World as well. So we built a really great platform over with the esports, and we're getting well known in the esports world, and we continue to grow that brand. And I think it's something there for the future. Definitely that we're going to continue to push for on that end.
Absolutely. I think people around our age, or kids around our age, if you will, I think you always maybe had that dream of growing up of maybe playing video games for a living, and kind of, I believe that was kind of maybe the start of maybe our generation of kind of kids, maybe seeing that be a possibility with the streaming things and all this stuff. So super cool to hear about. That was another thing when I was doing some research about you, when I knew you with the Bills. Just hearing about some things about you off the field, I was really intrigued to kind of ask you myself. So super cool what you got going off the field, and I would imagine you're quite the busy man during the off season, and I would imagine probably in season as well, having to handle phone calls and whatnot. So moving forward, Antonio, you grew up in North Carolina. You end up attending North Stanley High School, if I'm not mistaken, and you have a pretty prolific career, if I'm not mistaken. I believe you had three seasons of 2,000 rushing yards. I believe it was sophomore year, 2,100 yards, junior year, 2,200 yards, and another 2,100 yards in your senior year. I believe you were the number 7 back in your class. Tell us a little bit about, from my perspective, being Canadian, high school football, you'd be lucky. And maybe this is from my perspective, there is a few programs in the province that this is different, but from my perspective, you'd probably be lucky to have maybe 25 to 30 people watching your games. I'd say probably a good half of them would be your parents, right? So could you just maybe tell us a little bit about your high school experience, how that was for you being a star player, and just what your whole experience was like kind of playing high school football?
Yeah, for me, so I didn't go to a big school. I didn't. I had a really great high school career, and I played with some really good players. But our school wasn't very big, and yeah, it was fun. So our crowds weren't. We didn't have huge crowds. Now we had more. We did have more than around 25. We would fill out the stadium during my time at North Stanley. But yeah, I think I want to say we'd probably average probably around 500 to 1,000 people at our games. So it still wasn't anything major. Obviously, when I went to Ohio State, you go from that to 100,000 in the shoe. That was a big jump. But no, our games were extremely exciting. Our fans filled the stadium at that time. For our rivalry games, it got so big at that point that all the fans would actually line the end zone. So we had a fence around the end zone, and there weren't enough seats in our stadiums. So what we did was they just put a fence around the end zone, and everybody was standing around it. So when I scored touchdowns or anything, the fans are literally right there at you, man. So it was pretty fun. It's pretty
That's
fun.
crazy. Obviously, with the era we have today, obviously you have the social media and all that stuff. So I'm a fan of like the under the radars and stuff like that. You'd see kind of the atmospheres down south, and being Canadian and having what I had to experience, I would be I would relish those moments of kind of playing in front of, like I touched on, I played in the Canadian Junior Football League. It's if you were to kind of compare it, I guess it's like the JUCO of Canada, if you will, kind of like junior kids that want to try to get better and try to eventually go to eSports. That's the Canadian university level here, or even try to go down south or what have you. So just, yeah, I even at Canadian Junior Football League games, you'd be lucky to have 100 to maybe 200 people watching your games. So just total different aspect and total different appreciation of the game. So I really wanted to see what it was like for you playing football down south. And you even said that you didn't even play at one of the bigger schools, so it even gets crazier down there. So tell us what it was like. You touched on it there. You end up committing to Ohio State University. What really led you to Ohio State? Was there any other teams kind of closely in the running? And yeah, just take us through the whole recruiting process and what led you to Ohio State.
Yeah, man, my recruiting process was definitely a whirlwind. It started super early. way earlier than I even could have anticipated. So when I started trying to make decisions, I was way too young to really understand what I was doing. But no, I originally committed to North Carolina actually at my freshman year in high school. And obviously, kind of things kept taking off for me. So that I ended up retracting that commitment to North Carolina. So right leading up to that, I actually committed to Wisconsin. They had some really good running backs, and I wanted to play in the Big Ten. So that was something that Wisconsin had for me at that time. And then it all came down to meeting Urban Meyer at Ohio State, and him showing me the championship trophy, and me being a kid from a super small town. That just kind of changed the shape for me, because I'm like, obviously they're putting guys in the NFL, because I came in the year after Zeke was leaving. So it was Zeke's. So I was the class right after Ezekiel Elliott went to the Cowboys. And I'm like, the opportunity could be there for me to come in and play. It's Ohio State. I got a chance to win a championship, and that was really it. And they had a really, really good psychology department, and that was something that was big for me going into college. So that was, those are the things that led to Ohio State, and I definitely enjoyed my time there. Obviously, I ended up coming back to North Carolina due to some family issues that brought me back, but I enjoyed my time there. I still talk to those guys like, so often. We're brothers, man. But Ohio State, it was good. It was a good time.
Yeah, so for somebody like me that watches football on Sundays and stuff like that, obviously knows how great Ohio State is for producing prospects and just the level of football that they have there at the school. So you were when you attended there, you played with some pretty good teammates. If I just list off a few, I believe you played with Joe Burrow while he was there,
Yes,
Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Nick Bosa, Denzel Ward, Marshawn Lattimore, Chase Young, Jeff Okuda, a bunch of A-list All-Pro like players. What was that like? You touched on it there. You said going from playing at high school games of 1,000, and then so my town of Nanaimo, British Columbia, it's an hour and a half ferry ride from where you're going to be in Vancouver. My population for my entire city is 106,000. I believe Ohio State holds somewhere around that number.
yeah, right around.
A coworker of mine in November went down to Ohio, went to Ohio State game, went to a Cleveland Browns game, said it was incredible, said the Ohio State game was actually better than the Cleveland Browns game just because of the atmosphere. So just tell me what it was like being in the locker room with all those guys and then playing in a stadium with for me, the size of my town. Just tell us what that was like.
No, it was great, man. You learn a lot from playing around great players, and you take a lot from those guys, how they work. And obviously, I was on the same team as those guys, so in a sense, I was on the same level as those guys, and I just want to take pieces from everybody in a way, and kind of turn it into my own thing. So you've got, Terry was a guy, specifically Terry. I'm speaking of Terry. He comes to mind. He was so worked so hard, and always worked so hard, right? And to this day, I think it's shown across the league. Terry wasn't a guy that at Ohio State, he wasn't the number one superstar receiver. Like, he wasn't. But now he was the guy that just worked and worked and worked. And he was an example of a teammate of that caliber that I took a lot from. Terry McLaurin, he was the hardest working guy that I could talk about as a teammate. But outside of that, those guys, it was tough to compete against them all the time, but it made you so much better. It put me where I'm at today, and it got me to the NFL. It helped me do all of those things. It helped me continue to stay a pro football player. So a lot of lessons learned, a lot of things that I took from them, and a lot of things they took from me too. So it was fun stuff.
So obviously, you end up a North Carolina native. You end up transferring back home. How happy were you to? Obviously, you didn't maybe get the role that you maybe envisioned or you would have liked at Ohio State, and maybe that wasn't even the reason that you returned home. I know there was other reasons, but just how happy in general were you to kind of play your college football in front of friends and family, being able to travel a short distance? I'm sure you watched UNC play as a kid, growing up, going to games and spring camps and all that sort of thing. How excited were you to kind of come home, play some college football, and have a lot of fun and kind of get ready for the league, if you will?
Yeah, no, it was two different feelings, right? Playing at Ohio State, you got that really big caliber, top 3 school in the country every year. And then you got North Carolina, who's a really good football team. They're a really good football school. Obviously, historically, they're not the Ohio State, but they're a really good football school still. But for me, it's just a feeling you get of being able to play at home, play in front of your mom and dad, and everybody comes to see you, and you play better. Honestly, I remember my first time my parents saw me play at the same time in college. I actually went for I think it was 130 yards and 2 touchdowns against Pittsburgh, and it was a really good feeling. And it was just this is how I felt it should feel to play college football. So it was fun to be in North Carolina. I actually live 15 minutes from the university now. So, I stayed around the area. This is a great place, and this will always kind of be my home base, I guess you could call it.
Really coming back home, man. That's crazy to think about. So obviously you return back home. You return back home to another talented roster. I believe you play with Sam Hubbard, obviously a talented running back room, running back backfield, Michael Carter, as well as Javonte Williams. Maybe how was it sharing the backfield with them? I think you were, and I know obviously you won't say this, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but maybe was it frustrating at all that maybe that the numbers that you got for average yards per carry were showing there, but you weren't getting maybe the opportunity in terms of a lot of carries, and you were sharing that load? How was that, and was that really frustrating for you? I'm not really sure if you had were you envisioning the whole time going to the NFL, and was that kind of just dampening your plans? And how was that just sharing the backfield in that running back room for you?
No, it didn't bother me at all, because I think that once you're at this level and you understand how the game goes, you realize that keeping yourself fresh and sharing the ball a bit with some other guys, that's completely fine. So no, my thing was always, when you get the opportunities, you produce, and I never didn't produce, so I had no issue with it. Now going into my senior year, I had some little nagging injuries that didn't allow for me to play each week, unfortunately. So that's really my senior year. That's what happened. Now my junior year, I was playing each week, obviously. And but yeah, no, I was completely fine with it. It actually allowed me to excel even more and learn more on special teams as well. So all of us had to. So that was a good thing about the college that I played. Is all of us had to play special teams. Some people excelled at it, some people didn't. And the thing for me was I was showing that I could be a really good running back and I could be really good at special teams. So it's kind of both the best of both worlds for me in a sense. So sharing the ball just allowed for me to play more football in a sense.
And I think if you have a genuine relationship with them, which it sounds like you have with the other two, you can kind of enjoy watching them succeed. And unless in reverse, if it was maybe if he was an a-hole or something like that, or if he kind of only cared
Yeah,
about himself, you're kind of turn your shoulder to him, kind of maybe watching more for yourself more than him. But so moving
100%.
forward, you finish up your college career, and then obviously the whole world gets pretty much shut down. I'm super curious. This is my first time being able to hear from a NFL perspective. Uh, what was that like? Um, just take us through that. Obviously, there was no combine, if I'm not mistaken. I touched on it. You ended up going undrafted. Just what was it like going through that? And then when did you get the call from Buffalo that you were going to be coming to Western New York?
Yeah, no, it was very hectic. So I was actually training for pro day for my pro day whenever everything hit the fan. So I was in Atlanta, and I was out in Atlanta actually. Jalen Hurts was one of the guys I was training with in Atlanta and everything. So we were all down there working, and they were like, "Yeah, man, they just shut down and shutting down everything." I was like, "What's going on?" So all that starts happening. We have to completely shift what's going on. So had to change the format of how we were going to let teams see us for all our training and stuff. So we had to start posting all of our workouts on social media. Like to this day, I hate posting my workouts. Like I truly, truly hate posting my workouts because I had to do it so much during that time. Because in a sense, for a guy that was probably going to be undrafted or late rounds, you had to show everybody something I'm still working, just letting you know I'm still working. So I hate posting videos now, but back then that's what we had to do. Then you get to the training camp part. We didn't even have a preseason, man. So for guys that are undrafted, that's really, really it hurt, man. It hurts you. But eventually, I luckily I stuck around and I found a role that was significant for me in Buffalo. And at that time, that was practice squad, and I was going to be the best I could be in that situation. But by the end of the season, obviously, I got my time to shine in the debut against Miami, and yeah, that kind of did me like this. So ended up leading into that second year and into New York, and now we're here with BC. So things are good, man.
Damn right. Big fan of that Week 17 game. So, what was your maybe initial thoughts when you knew you were going to go to Buffalo? Not sure if you're a big NFL guy, but knowing that they had just drafted 2 third-round backs in Motor and Zach, and you were going to be sharing that room. Obviously, you were on practice squad for most of that year, but what was your initial thoughts? Buffalo kind of, I believe at the time, really hadn't, we weren't really Buffalo yet. We were coming off 19, if I'm not mistaken, where we had lost to Houston in the playoff game. We had not won a playoff game yet. Josh Allen wasn't really Josh Allen, if you will. You had just traded for Stephon Diggs. What was your initial thoughts of coming to Buffalo, playing for Buffalo?
I had no idea what I was getting myself into, man. Had no idea. I didn't grow up liking Buffalo. I didn't grow up knowing anything about the Buffalo Bills, really. When Buffalo called, so they called during the last pick of that draft. So the Giants actually had the last pick of that draft, and I was thinking that there was a potential that I could go to the Giants because we had spoke before that as well. But so they called while the last pick is going on, and I'm like, oh shoot, I might be this last pick in the draft. But they were like, hey, we're gonna take you right after this pick. So welcome to Buffalo. And I was like, let's go. So we all celebrated and stuff. But no, I had no idea. I knew Josh Allen had a heck of an arm. I knew Diggs was coming in, and I knew we had a really solid team, but I didn't know anything about the NFL. I didn't know what the landscape looked like. Didn't know how to operate at the time. I was a rookie coming in and didn't know a dang on thing, man. So I was just shutting my mouth and watching most of my rookie year.
I would imagine, or maybe you've seen on social media and stuff like that, but did you expect Bills Mafia to kind of be what it was? And for like someone that was an undrafted free agent, did you expect to kind of have the, I'm not sure if you know that like the after the Week 17 game, a lot of people were raving for you and wanting for you to kind of be in every game player to dress on game days and stuff like that. They really thought that you brought an aspect that we didn't have. But is that something also that surprised you? Just the what Bills Mafia was?
The Bills Mafia has definitely surprised me. Obviously, you hear about it coming into the league, and people be like, "The Bills fans are wild. They're wild. They're wild," and it's cool and stuff. But until it hits, man, and I think it really got me after we won in Denver and sealed the AFC, the East. And we came back to the airport, and we were about to land. And the flight attendant, she came over and she was like, "Hey guys, just letting you all know there's a lot of fans at the airport. When you get into your cars, just make sure you keep the windows up. Just don't want anybody reaching in or anything like that, right?" Dude, I've never seen so many fans. There were people on top of like hangars at the airport and stuff. It was insane. But Bills Mafia was definitely that. And yeah, I left the Bills on good terms, man. And Bills Mafia was still rocking with them, man. So good deal.
Only in Buffalo. So I'm not sure if you aware, Antonio. I'm sure you're not, but Vancouver actually has a Bills backers bar where people gather and watch Bills games. I attended a few games last year, so maybe we'll have to get you to go to a game one week or something like that. Maybe if you guys have a bye week or something like that, it lines up. Who knows? So,
We might try it, man.
so going forward, how fast were you introduced to kind of the business of the NFL? Obviously, that season you were kind of obviously on the roster, off the roster. How was going through that?
Yeah, I was basically introduced immediately because I was an undrafted guy that didn't have a preseason. So it was kind of an uphill battle from the get go, and that's signed up for it. I knew that's what it was going to be, and I took it on head on, and I'm still riding with it. You know what I mean? But no, it was definitely rough. On a 21, 22 at the time. Wasn't too old, but I was off on your own, and you're chasing your dream, and you think you got it, and it's kind of dangling in front of you. That's what it kind of felt like for me. But eventually, like I said, you gotta the part of being a pro in sports. I think that people don't anticipate is obviously you have to have the skill set, you have to be able to work hard, but the mental aspect that comes with it, with being able to be resilient and bounce back in tough situations that are somewhat out of your control most of the time. That's a major part in the business side, and that's not talked about a lot. But I think that's one of the keys within being a pro.
You obviously must have made an impression though with the limited opportunities, like you said, with a COVID season where you're not able to bond with your teammates, even see like personnel around the building, that sort of thing. You obviously made an impression because you obviously either kept coming back or you stuck around the team for a majority of that season. So we bring it to week 17 where you get elevated against the Miami Dolphins. We have a pretty dominant half, and you're able to kind of pretty much play the entire second half, if I'm not mistaken. I think you were around 12 carries, 63 yards, 2 touchdowns, a couple of receptions, I believe. How special was that for you being an undrafted free agent? That being your first opportunity to kind of show yourself in the NFL, like, hey, I do belong, I can do this. And just how cool is that moment for you?
It was really, really cool, man, and it felt good to go and do it. Because it wasn't a matter of me doubting myself at all. Like I never doubted myself, and I never will. Because I know what I can do, and I know the work that I put in for this thing. I think it was more so of me to kind of shut people up and also prove people right. Prove people right that have believed in me this whole time, and also shut people up that are like obviously they didn't think I'd be anything or wouldn't have stand a chance out there. But no, it was fun, man. Was I surprised by it at all? I wasn't. And I don't say that in any cocky way in whatsoever, but I wasn't because, like I said, I know who I am and I know what I can do and I know what I'm able to do when I'm fully healthy. And that was just me trying to do what I could do. I just hope to continue to do it. Like I said, I know who I am. I know what I can do, and I've gotten to a point where I'm just tired of always jumping back on that game and things like that. I just want to wipe that clean in a way and kind of start over with BC, man. I want to What about week 1, BC? That's what I want to talk about eventually, not week 17 in Buffalo anymore. Let's start this thing over and let me really show people who Antonio is.
Absolutely, man. I've been clamoring for you up here. We had Julio Caravetta on the podcast. He's a former BC Lion. Now he's the color analyst for the team. You will meet Julio for sure. I was clamoring. I said, Julio, I'm having Antonio on. He will be the starting running back for the BC Lions this year. So excited. June 17th, I'll be in the house. Excited to see what you're going to do for the squad. So moving forward, just a kind of a fan question here. How cool is it to be, if I'm not mistaken, you were dressed for the divisional round of the playoffs that season against Baltimore, if I'm not mistaken. If you're a Bills fan, you'll kind of know that as the Taron Johnson pick 6 game. How cool is that to be dressed for that game? And just, I know it wasn't a packed house, but just what was the energy like when that play was going on? And just how was that for you to be dressed in a playoff game? Like I said, I know it wasn't a full house or anything like that, but how cool was that? And did you really feel that energy of that play kind of after that?
Yeah, 100%. It was so crazy in Buffalo because it was like, yes, the stadium the stadium was filled out most of the time, and that one game, like you said, it wasn't. I think the weather was it bad weather? It was something. It was something going on. I think it was
It
wind.
was like, if I'm not mistaken, it was like snowing, but it hadn't stuck yet. It was very
Yeah,
cold.
yeah. But even the amount of people that were there, it was still so loud, and it felt like it was such a big moment, man. And I almost forgot about that play, but thinking back now, it was such a pivotal play for us as a team, man, in that season. But no, it was a heck of a play by Taryn, and happy to see he's still doing well too, man.
Taryn's doing very well. So obviously that season doesn't end quite how we wanted it to, but going into 2021, you stick around. Um, how maybe just this is maybe just a whole team aspect kind of question, but just you had been around the locker room. I'm sure you had made connections. You had kind of felt a part of the team. How confident were you guys going into that 21 season, just knowing that, you know what, we belong and maybe this is time for us to take the next step?
Yeah, I think the team was very confident that season, and when it turned out the way it did, it obviously a lot of guys were kind of hurt from that, and obviously a lot of people, kind of departed from that team, obviously. But no, we were hurt because we knew we had a good team, man. And I wasn't as involved as I would like to be with that team. Obviously, I actually had I had something going on then. I can't remember. But I was obviously on the team all season. Uh, yeah, man, it sucked because we were so good. We had such a good team, and we thought that was definitely gonna be it. I was like, before the season, I was like, I'm definitely getting the Super Bowl this year, man. But obviously that's why the league is what it is. There's a lot of good players. There's a lot of good teams, and whoever's the best team on that given day, that's who's gonna get it, man. And when that time happened in the playoffs, we weren't the best team on that given day, and unfortunately, we didn't get the job done. So.
Yeah, obviously everyone says it. There's only one Super Bowl champion, and there's 31 other teams that are unhappy at the end of the day because they didn't win it. So just a couple more questions for you, Antonio, and I'll get you out of here. This is maybe just one last Bills question and just kind of a personal question for myself, having someone that was in the locker room with the team. I just got to ask kind of, how was it playing with maybe I guess first of all, how fast did you see Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs build their connection, and just kind of how did you see them? Obviously, with Josh, he's kind of a very from what we hear, a very good leader. He has like the handshakes with all the guys and stuff like that. How does Josh and kind of Steph interact around that locker room, and just kind of, I feel like not stretching, but be the captains of kind of the offense and of that team a little bit. And obviously it was a little bit of a topic this year with Steph and Josh at the end of the year, of Steph kind of being a little bit unhappy and stuff like that. Personally, I'm not a delusional fan. I think they'll get over it. I think if you're a fan of football, you've seen like Tom Brady and stuff like that get mad at teammates before. That stuff happens, right? I think Josh and Steph are brothers. And if you're not like familiar, Steph's kind of locked in here in terms of like dead cap and all that stuff. So just the people talking about Steph getting out of here because he's unhappy, I think are crazy, at least for a few years. But just what did you see from that connection early on, and just how those guys interact in the locker room?
Yeah, no, Josh was a heck of a leader, and me and Steph actually became kind of good friends over time too. But Josh, man, he's definitely as advertised. Everything that people say about him, I literally can't say a bad thing about the dude. He tries to lead the best way he can, and he leads in a great way. Because he's a guy that gets to know all of his teammates. If you were talking to Josh, you wouldn't be able to tell who was on the practice squad and who was the starting player. And that's kind of how he operates. And Steph was the same way, really. That was the cool thing about the Bills locker room at that time. Obviously, I can't speak on it now. I don't know how it is now, but during that time, it was such a great group of dudes, man. And we all just loved playing ball and wanted to go win. And Josh was the head of it, and Steph was his right hand man, and you could see it. You could see it happening clear as day. And they would just do things at practice. It was like, goodness, it's like, how does that? I don't even know. Like, it was like they were at some point they were connected basically with their eyes closed. It seemed like, but two great players, and I was super lucky to be able to play with and see the chemistry, see how a great duo can look in football, and hopefully take lessons from things that I took from those guys and bring it up to CFL in aspects and ways.
Awesome. So obviously your Bills career kind of comes to an end. You move on to the Giants. I'm curious, being a Bills fan, how was your relationship with Brian Dable and Joe Shane, obviously being former Buffalo Bills, and then they obviously get the gig over in New York, and you go over there and join them. How was your relationship with Dabes? Obviously, people in Bills Mafia really love Dabes, really miss him. Would love to see him back in Buffalo. That is me as well. But just what was your relationship with those two guys, and just kind of what do those guys mean to you?
Yeah, no, great relationships, man. Obviously, that was one of the reasons that I was able to move over to New York when I did. Dave took the job, and Joe took the job, and obviously, I actually was the first signee of the Joe Shane era with the Giants, I believe. So signed with Joe in New York, and then he actually hired Dave's after I signed, so that was funny. So it all worked well, but things went good. Obviously, had a really good preseason, and made the 53 man out of there. So everything was good, man. I enjoyed my time with the Giants. Obviously, it was 1-2, but it was a good time, and it was a good team. And you can see they're definitely building something in New York.
So you touched on it there. Your Giants career kind of comes to a closure, and now you have decided to come up north and join the CFL. I'm curious, what was your first time kind of hearing of the Canadian Football League, and what was your expectations coming into the league, and just the level of play, what you're expecting in the province, like city-wise and all that sort of thing? Just what are your expectations?
I am like, and I keep saying this, like I'm truly just so excited, man. Because as I said earlier, I'm from a super, super, super small town in North Carolina. Football has given me the opportunity to go to another country and play. Like when you look at it like that, like when you take the little things and you're like, dude, I get to go and play football in another country, and for a really good organization, for a really good team, for a professional league that's not really to me, when I really look at it, I've always known about the CFL. It's never been, I didn't know about it. It was more so I was in the United States, so I figured if I shot, I was going to try to go to the NFL. But obviously, I knew it was there, and it's always been relevant. It's never really been a drop off compared to other leagues. But CFL is a legitimate league, it's a professional league, and it's a league that I think can go toe to toe with other leagues, and I'm excited for it, man. And I'm excited to be in BC. I'm excited to be in Vancouver. I've actually got a good amount of friends across the league that I played with from college or that played in the NFL with me and have now moved over. And I've talked to a few guys, and one of the guys that I talked to, I'm good friends with, is actually Walter Fletcher. He's a running back for Montreal,
Montreal.
I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, Walter.
There's a few former Bills as well. I'm not sure if you play with Tanner Gentry, Duke Williams.
I know
Uh,
Duke. Yeah,
there's a few others too, if I'm not mistaken, across the league. But sorry, keep going, Antonio.
yeah, and everybody that I've talked to, man, have told me that Vancouver's the best. Most of them have said when they travel, it's their favorite place to travel to, and I'm just like, shoot, I'm playing there, man. So no, I'm excited. I've only heard good things about the CFL. I've only heard good things about Canada, and I honestly can't wait just to get started, just to get up there and get things going because I love interacting with fans. I love interacting with everything. So I know once I get there in person, I can get things going and really just get involved as much as possible. I'm excited.
Awesome. So I'm curious. You said you've known about the CFL for a while. How have you been preparing for the change? If people are tuning in, they're not familiar, the field is wider, the field is longer, the ball is bigger. We only play 3 downs up here. If you're not familiar, if you punt it out of the back of the end zone, that's a rouge, that's 1 point. So you can get a 1 point up here. There's some funky, crazy rules. Obviously, you can get the waggles with the receivers, so the slots can move around. You can have a bunch of people motioning at once. How have you been preparing for people that are up here that play high school football outside of British Columbia? They play Canadian Football League rules in high school across the country, so they're kind of familiar growing up. You've never obviously played Canadian Football League rules, so how have you been preparing for that change a little bit and just maybe implementing a few things into your game that you think you can bring to this style of play?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, at the end of the day, it's still football. You still got to go play ball. Obviously, for me, I'm gonna have to. You got to operate with more of a sense of urgency. Obviously, you got 3 downs. You got to understand there's more room. There's more. There's one more defender. There's a few things that you got to account for a bit. But at the end of the day, like I said, I think it's football. I love the motions as an offense because it's to me it's kind of like pre-snap movement on defense. They can rush up to the line. Let's do it back to them now. So for me, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about our emotions specifically, and I don't, I'm very interested for the 3 down thing because obviously my whole life has been 4 downs. So I think the sense of urgency within plays is probably turned up a bit, and I completely understand that, and I'm definitely prepping for that. And I've kind of started implementing it into my workouts now, as well, and just prep myself for that as well.
I'm excited to see you play, man. I think you'll do really well with this kind of style of play, and I think you'll be able to excel really well. So my last question for you, Antonio, is maybe just a little bit of a teaser you can give to Lions and CFL fans. Just let them know what should they expect from you this season when they tune in to watch Lions games, they tune in to watch Antonio Williams play. Obviously, Buffalo being right on the border of Toronto there, a lot of Argo fans are Buffalo Bills fans as well. So I know how diehard they will. They'll recognize your name. They'll be familiar with your name. If you're not also familiar, Chad Kelly also plays for the Argonauts. He's Jim Kelly's nephew. So when either Buffalo Bills fans, CFL fans, BC Lions fans are tuning in, what should they expect to see from Antonio Williams this season?
Just a guy that's going to give it his all when he's on the field, man. I'm definitely a physical runner. I've always been a physical runner, and I'm just I'm a guy that understands the game, and I try to play the game the right way. And just I'm a guy that wants to win. Whatever BC needs from me, out of me to win, and if I can contribute in that manner, that's what you'll see out of Antonio Williams.
Awesome, man. So Like I said, I'm excited. I'll be in the house for a few games this year. Really excited to watch you play. Like I said, I know I'm maybe speaking a little bit premature for yourself, but I'm already going around telling everybody that this will be the BC Lions starting running back this year. So appreciate you. I know you're busy. Appreciate you taking some time out and joining me, giving me a little bit of your time, introducing yourself to my audience. For those that you guys that are tuning in, if you guys enjoyed, let me know down in the comments below. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this episode. Be sure to check out all the Apple Podcast channels, follow that, download the episodes. Antonio, anything you want to close out with? Where can the people find you? Maybe the eSports stuff, the NASCAR stuff, anything you want to close out with here?
Yeah, man. No, if you want to find me on social media, you can just honestly type in Antonio Williams on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and that should pop up. And then if you want to type in Ancient World Gaming on Twitter, Twitter and Instagram will pop up. That's the esports team. And then just follow one of my good friends and my driver for the team as well, Joe Graf Jr. in the Xfinity Series of NASCAR. Get you guys introduced to the racing world a little bit. So yeah, that's all I got, man. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome, man. So maybe we'll have to link up again, maybe mid-season or something like that, maybe during one of the bye weeks, or maybe, like I said, maybe we'll have to attend a Bills backers bar when the season is going. I'm sure Bills Mafia would love that. And it's just right across from BC Place where you'll be playing your home game. So it's pretty close there. And I'm sure maybe you'll be walking around that neighborhood, and maybe one morning you'll be walking around and you'll see a bunch of Bills fans Sunday morning, 10 a.m. screaming around. So like I said, Antonio, I appreciate you joining me. I'll definitely maybe keep in contact with you, and maybe we'll have you on mid-season, just get a little update of how you're doing in the Canadian Football League. And like I said, man, I really appreciate you. I know you're a busy guy. So thanks, Antonio, for joining us today, man.
Thank you for having me, Cole.
All right, and that's another episode of Coast to Coast Gridiron, a football podcast, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for joining.